British have never apologized for their colonial crimes in Palestine. Professor Rashid Khalidi explains how the British violently repressed Palestinians who resisted colonization prior to the official creation of the State of Israel in 1948, and how violent colonial practices shape Israeli policies today.
The British employed repressive tactics and carried out all kinds of atrocities against the Palestinians from very soon after they arrived in 1917 right through 1939.
The Palestine Mandate established British rule in the territory after the collapse of the Ottoman Empire. Over 10% of all Palestinian men were killed, wounded, imprisoned, or exiled by the British.
What the British did in the 1930s especially did turn large parts of the country into prisons. So one of my uncles was exiled, one of my uncles was imprisoned in these camps. These methods, imprisonments of huge numbers of people, we're not talking about hundreds, we're talking about thousands. The treatment of villagers, where whole villages would be cordoned off and closed, are things that Israel has inherited from the British.
The British trialed, tested, and developed methods of counterinsurgency across their colonies, from India to Sudan and Ireland to Palestine, to stamp out rebellion to colonial rule.
When the mandate is being set up, the British are using their strategies of counterinsurgency in Ireland, which are ultimately then transferred to Palestine. It's not just a transfer of techniques, it was also a transfer of personnel. The people who are burning down towns, the people who are assassinating Irish revolutionaries, are sent to Palestine, essentially to do the same kinds of things. The British brought in over 100,000 troops and were using aerial bombardment. Teagard comes in and he builds what are called Arab interrogation centers, which are essentially torture centers. Ord Wingate is brought in, and he creates what are called special night squads, groups that were created to infiltrate areas where Palestinian rebels were thought to be operating, and to carry out reprisals against innocent villagers. Wingate did this with soldiers from the British Army, as well as selected recruits from the Zionist militias.
The violence didn't end when British colonizers left. After the State of Israel's creation by the UN Partition Plan of Palestine, Palestinians faced mass expulsion from their lands, and at least 750,000 people became refugees. Zionist forces killed about 15,000 Palestinians in a series of mass atrocities and massacres. Besides training Zionist militias, the British also left behind a series of colonial laws that Israel took over.
The most important of the British regulations that were used to suppress the Palestinians were the 1945 emergency regulations, the most important provision of which is the suspension of the right to counsel and the possibility of indefinite administrative detention without charge, without trial, which can be renewed every 6 months.
Thousands of Palestinians are imprisoned in Israeli jails, with hundreds, including children, facing administrative detention. From inside and outside of Israel's prisons, the tactics used by Palestinians in their fight for freedom and justice are similar to other independence struggles around the world, where colonial regimes eventually fell.
The British need to apologize for a great deal. Palestine is only one arena in which they carried out crimes during the colonial